Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
G'day, my name is Adam Jones. Mate, today we're getting into the international bestseller, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, the winner of the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, he won the Nobel Prize in 2002 and basically spent his whole life just working out, basically how people think.
Yeah.
And the fast and slow bit, so it boils down to what he calls System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the fast, effortless intuition, where we just see something and make an instant assessment of it, versus System 2, which is a slow, methodical, effortful, deliberate thinking that actually takes time. You actually have to stop and think about.
Definitely.
So that's the fast and the slow.
So yeah, for me, what the whole purpose of the book was, with that in mind, is to understanding how your brain works and comes to conclusions. So then, with that, you can use this information to be able to make better decisions. Because what he proves in the book a lot of the time now, when we make decisions, it's not out of being rational, it's out of emotion and using System 1 thinking. Sometimes you might need to use the slower System 2 to arrive at a better decision.
Yeah, for sure. He says that every day, everyone has these quote-unquote magical moments of expert intuition, or what we think is expert intuition, where it might be like, I don't know, we're just sitting here and something will fall off the desk and we reach out and we catch it. Or we see, something along those lines. I should have thought of a better example before we started. But something like that. But he says it's not intuition, it's more just recognition.
Yeah,
so that we know what the world around us is, and when something's different, our System 1 just instantly recognises that difference, and that's when we think something, that this magical intuition happened, but it's really just System 1 in action. That's
it. So throughout the book, he shows a bunch of visual illusions, and then what he also shows is not all illusions are visual. There's also cognitive illusions, which he has a plenitude of them throughout the book.
Yeah, I think, and he sort of says the worst thing is overconfidence, in that we think we're really good, and that we sort of refuse to acknowledge our own ignorance, and that's why we probably come to relying on System 1, because we think we're so good.
So, mate, fucking phenomenal book. We'll get into it.
It's big. It's like, 450 pages? It's long. It covers a lot of... My only criticism is that he covers so much stuff. It gets a little bit repetitive, but it's impressive stuff.
There's a lot of good shit, man.
Nonetheless.
So, 5 parts. So we're going to cover a few chapters out of each part.
Yeah.
So we're covering about what we thought was the best 30% for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, we'll get stuck in, eh?
Yeah.
So,
go for it. Well, part 1 is the 2 systems. So it's really an intro. Chapter 1, the characters of the story. So we already mentioned, sort of System 1 is that fast thinking, that automatic, quick, no effort, no control, whereas slow thinking is deliberate, effortful, orderly, structured thinking.
Yeah. So say if he wrote a statement, New York is a large city in the United States, the moon revolves around the earth, and the chicken has 4 legs. So at first there's no issue with that kind of statement, because your associative machinery thought how many animals have 4 legs. So if you're System 1 thinking, you'll be fooled by that whole statement. But if you might need System 2 to go, hang on, chickens don't have 4 legs. Chickens have 3 legs.
3? Or 2?
2 legs. Yeah, fuck. Mate, I don't know what chickens I've been looking at. But you could have 3, get an extra bit of meat out of it. But anyway, back to the book.
No, it's good.
But the point of that is cognitive strain. I was just doing.
You must have just seen 3 somewhere on the screen.
Mate, sometimes when I write my notes, I'm not thinking it, and I just read off and it's incorrect. Yeah, did that quite recently. Anyway, we're moving on.
Move on. So he says that we can do several things at once. So we can multitask, but we can only multitask if all the things are relatively easy and don't take much demand. He also says that if we're activating our System 2, that deliberate, slow thinking, we can't do 2 System 2 things at once, and that System 1 would take over.
Yeah.
So if you've already got a hard problem you're working on, and then someone asks another question, you're not going to think about it, you're just going to use your System 1 and possibly get it wrong. We'll go into why System 1 is flawed a bit later on.
Yep, bang on. So another chapter we liked was number 9, answering an easy question.
Yeah, that was a good one. It's all about substitution, saying that whenever we're asked a question, a question that would take System 2 deliberate thinking, we might use System 1 and replace that question with an easy question without even knowing it.
Yep.
So some of the examples he gives here, I won't make up any because I'll just stuff it up. Some of the examples he gives here, he's like, it might be, how much money are you willing to donate to save an endangered species?
Yeah.
And so that would be a system 2 task of working out, okay, well, what are the costs? What are the costs of saving this animal, and what are the benefits of saving this animal? Working it all out and working out how much you personally should donate. So that would be full system 2, but we replace that with an easy question in that, how much emotion do I feel from seeing a picture of a dead endangered tiger?
Yeah.
And we use that system 1 to answer the tougher system 2 question. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So it might be more natural to not go down that path, is it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like reading this, you understand that you can ask better questions to arrive at a better answer.
Yeah. I'll give another example because that one was a bit shit.
Yeah, I didn't fully follow.
Okay, another better question. So it says, how happy are you with your life? And that will be a system 2 question. We have to weigh up everything in your life, and it'll take a long time, a lot of deliberate thought. But the system 1 question we then think about straight away is, how happy am I right now in this instant when you ask me this question?
Yep.
And use that system 1 to answer that quite extended system 2 question.
Yep.
Does that make more sense?
Yep, love it, mate. So, yeah, the start of the book just kind of sets it up, the differences between the 2 types of thinking. And it goes through some good examples of some of the cognitive illusions just to prove that we're maybe not so logical. So then that's a good setup for the book to show some different things. So part 2 of the book is heuristics and biases. So some pretty great chapters in here, but what we loved is chapter 11 is one of them. So it's anchors. This is like super actionable, yeah? Yeah,
this is really important. And there's 2, the anchors affect both system 1 and system 2. The anchors affect system 1 through priming, and that if you're told this house is worth $500,000, and that's the anchor.
Yeah.
So that's your starting point. That's where your mind goes to straight away. And system 1 is gullible. System 1 just wants to make everything true. Yep. Okay, so it says that, okay, you've just told me this is worth $500,000, so then you start looking for everything that makes it worth $500,000. Oh, it's got 3 bedrooms, it's got a pool, it's got a nicely new renovated kitchen. So system 1 is looking for everything that makes that first statement true.
Yeah, love it, mate. So they had a good example here of a charity drive. So when people walked into the door, they were asked, would you be willing to pay $5 to contribute? The average person paid $20, and then other people were asked, would you be willing to pay $400 to contribute? And the average was $143. So that's crazy, a 7x difference just by the person asking the question put an anchor in.
Yeah.
And then that's where the asking price. So obviously the most actionable way of taking this out is your end of year review at work. Is you start, it might even be a ridiculous number higher, say $20,000 extra than you're meant to be, but they're going to go above, say, what you're meant to be on. They're going to go above that.
Yeah.
With anchoring.
Yeah, awesome. And that's a good segue into this, how System 2 interprets anchors, in that it's a place for adjustment. So that anchor is the spot where you start and you adjust from there.
Yeah.
So sort of like what you said, if you start at you want a 10 grand pay rise and you'll adjust down, they'll adjust up.
Yep.
Whereas if you start at 20, that's the point where you start adjusting from. And that's the anchor that you put in place.
Yeah. So always heard of anchors, but this is kind of the reasoning by why it works. So
the exact opposite of what you just said as well. If you're, I guess, on the other end, and there's a ridiculous offer. So like say we were just in Bali recently, and there was guys that say you'd want this souvenir, and they'd say this is worth $50, but it's a ridiculously high. They know it, we know it. And rather than saying, no, I'm not going to give you $50, I'll give you $5, which is also ridiculous. So he said, rather than both having ridiculous at either end of the spectrum, instead of saying their starting point is 50, say, mate, that's ridiculous, take it completely off the table and get them to say a starting point of 30.
Yeah, okay.
And then that's their starting point, and then your starting point, and you can work from there.
Yeah.
And you'd win out then, I'd say.
Yeah.
Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, mate. Fucking oath. Love it, mate. So should we, chapter 17, regression to the mean. So this is a pretty cool thing. So a great example of this was when Daniel was the author, an instructor to the Israeli Air Force. So he was training the managers of the pilots or something like that. So what the pilots were saying, or the manager of the pilots were saying, is how they so if the pilot fucked up big time and then the manager yelled at him and got angry at them, they thought that worked because after that the pilot would do a lot better.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, if the pilot did really well and then they praised him, they would do worse next time.
Yep.
So they thought the effect of what they were saying on the pilot influenced how they're going to act after that. But in reality, what were they doing is regressing to the mean. So in reality, they might have done something out of the ordinarily bad at the start, and then just by chance when they were insulted or yelled at for that, they just regress back to their average mean, and then we put a causal story around it.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? Correlation versus causation.
Yeah,
that's so true. And it sort of came up in Drive as well, in that rewards for good performance work much more effectively than punishment for bad performance.
Yeah.
But they were thinking, because whenever they yelled at someone, they got better. And so they thought, okay, well, if I punish someone, that works better than rewarding them. That's so right. they got it all around the wrong way.
So if they're that far below the mean, it's very unlikely that they're going to go actually worse.
Yeah. So, exactly.
Yeah, that's very true. I think in a lot of situations, if someone's doing really bad, they get yelled at, they probably will get closer to the mean and do better.
Yeah, and that just messes up the whole story of you thinking that yelling at someone makes them better.
Yep.
The other thing in that chapter was he said that success equals talent plus luck. So it was a very simplistic thing, and he was saying that, say in golf, you have a really good round. It's probably because, yes, you're talented, but you got lucky that time. Specifically, the conditions are right for you. But then the next time, when that luck element, because luck is completely random, that luck is going to even back out, and you're always going to come back to average, come back to that level of talent.
So yeah, luck has a bigger part in a lot of things than we contribute for.
Yeah, definitely.
So another part we like, chapter 19, is the illusion of understanding. Mm-hmm. So that goes into the halo effect, yeah? Yeah,
the halo effect is cool.
Yeah. So we'll use the example of, or he uses the example of, if you got a baseball pitcher, he's handsome and athletic and, he's a cool looking dude, we're likely to rate him better at throwing the ball just because we associate those things with being a good pitcher. So we wrongly associate things together and then we might come to the wrong conclusion. Yeah,
that's it. And so that halo effect is sort of, you look at one aspect of a person, and if you like that, it's going to sort of filter down to every other aspect and permeate, and you think, if they're good at this thing, then I think that they're going to be better at these things as well.
Yeah.
Which is not true. It's just a ridiculous
and then,
assumption.
Spot on. So then on the flip side of that, you got the negative halo effect. So he uses Hitler as a good example. So if I say, or if he says Hitler loved dogs and little children, people will be like, oh, fuck. They almost get angry because this violates the halo effect, because any bit of kindness we put in Hitler, it's just unbelievable. It just doesn't make sense because we associate everything bad with Hitler when, who knows, he might have had a pet dog and really loved the dog.
Yeah.
But that's very hard to believe due to the halo effect we have with him. We just think he's a fucking cunt.
Yeah. that's accurate.
Basically. Yeah.
I'd say that's pretty
accurate. Fair
cunt. Yeah, definitely. A few other things from this chapter 19 was the hindsight bias.
Yeah.
In that when something happens, you look back and you think, oh, I knew it all along. Whereas probably at the time you didn't. But looking back, you did. So he says that a lot of people now look back and say, oh, I knew GFC was coming in 2008. Whereas back in 2007, they weren't saying we're stuffed. And another one was outcome bias, in that you always seem to blame, you always get blamed for bad things and you get neglected for good things. And I think, I'm not sure, I might be combining a few things, but maybe say, if you go to a sporting game and the referee, and if your team loses and you say, oh, man, that referee was so bad, he cost us the game, you blame them for the bad things they do, but when you never hear someone say, oh, man, the referee was so good today.
Yeah.
So you get neglected for the good and always blamed for the bad.
Bang on. Mate, there's probably one thing after reading this about the halo effect. It's something that I've probably been fooled of in the past. Oh, I'm hoping I'm not fooled, but it's basically with Elon Musk. After what he's done, I associate this guy is bulletproof, invincible. I've invested money into Tesla and everything, when the halo effect might be he might have had a bit of statistical chance to get where he is now. I'd like to think that's not the case.
Hopefully. But he's got lucky a lot of times.
But yeah.
If it's just luck.
But I've got the halo effect thinking he is the fucking man and he's invincible.
Mate, I reckon he's saving the human race.
Yeah.
He actually is. That's not an exaggeration, I don't think.
Well,
hopefully
so anyway.
Hopefully.
All made saved. Number chapter 21, intuitions versus formulas.
Yeah, the big thing here is saying that almost always, if you work out, say, set rules and set formulas and you just follow those, you're going to do better than using your intuition. So he says maybe stock pickers, whereas if you've just got a set formula, if this happens, we buy, if this happens, we sell, and stick to that rather than using your intuition. Normally your intuition's wrong. Yeah,
because at this stage of the book, we've proved that the intuition can be quite wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah, and you're always looking to validate your intuition. System 1 always wants to prove that you're right.
Yeah.
So that's definitely wrong.
Chapter 23, which is super cool, the outside view. So this goes into the planning fallacy. So forecasts are unrealistic a lot of the time because we go to the close to best case scenarios. And what we emit is this idea of unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
So what Daniel did with his... He was asked with a few others to design a curriculum for a new university course, and they were told at the start you're going to have, or the people who undertake this project have a 40% failure rate, and it takes 7 to 10 years to complete it. So this is like base rate information or the outside view. So this is their intuition's not interrupting anything. They're just told these are just the raw stats. Don't let your emotions and intuitions get involved.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's that's not the natural way to go. So they let the intuitions get involved. So they thought it'd take 3 or 4 years. But what they found out is when they started, all these unknowns appeared, and the result of the project, it did end up taking 7 to 10 years, and they were very close to failure as well.
Yeah, as you said, so the outside view is that base rate of this is everything that's happened in the past, and this is the stats. Whereas they had the inside view of, we're all really smart, we're such a good team, we work well together. Everything we've come, they've already done 6 months' work, and we did it really well, and we're ahead of schedule. So they took that inside view, and we thought, it's all good, we'll smash this out of the park. But in the end, the outside view was correct.
Yeah, so the actionable thing in this is when you're doing a new project or something, look for the outside view, get as much outside base rate information as possible of other people who've done similar things.
Yeah.
And trust that time or how the difficulty of the project rather than your own. Yeah,
the big thing here also was groupthink, which is a negative thing, which came up in one of our previous books.
Yeah.
They're all starting to blow together. I forget which one it was. But anyway, so groupthink. So he said rather than, if doing a survey, there's 10 people and you want to say, how long do you think it'll take us through this curriculum? And, the first guy will say 3 years, and that's going to influence everyone else. They're not going to say, I think it's going to take 15 years, or I think it's going to take 2 months.
Yeah.
So he said instead of doing that, instead of doing those public things, get each person to privately write down their prediction and then put them in front of everyone. So people aren't influenced by what people have said. They're using their own intuition, their own ideas first, and then comparing them.
Similar to the idea of anchoring, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
So that went into the chapter 24, which is a pretty, very kind of similar topics, which is the engine of capitalism. So it says how optimists play a disproportionate role in shaping our lives, as like the chances of succeeding in business are so low. But what a lot of optimists or entrepreneurs don't do is they actually don't get the outside view and say, hey, you're probably going to fail at this.
Yeah.
So the idea that entrepreneurs are optimism at the same time, it does actually help our whole economy as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. He says that optimism, he says that when action is needed, optimism is usually a good thing because you optimistically think you're going to succeed, so you take action. You're not fearful of failure, I guess, because you think, I'm so good, I'm going to succeed anyway.
Yep.
But he also says, contrary to that, he says optimism is widespread, stubborn, and costly because you'll probably... Statistically, 90% of businesses fail, but the optimists think, I'm going to be in the 10%, so they go for it anyway and end up losing a lot of time, money, energy, effort.
Yep, that's right. Chapter 26, the prospect theory. So this just goes into, and you might be able to expand on it a bit more, is we are loss averse, so we avoid loss at all costs as we compared to striving for gains.
Yeah, so he says that losing $100 is you feel far worse than if you won $100. So he says losing $100 might be more like winning $200 or something like that.
Yeah.
So as you say, we want to avoid loss at all cost.
Yeah.
And there was a few interesting things he said here. Is like if you had, say, you could either choose to have a guaranteed $500 or a 50% chance of winning $1,000. So statistically, the expected value is exactly the same. You can either guarantee 500 or you've got a 50-50 of getting 1,000 or zero. Statistically, they're exactly the same. But he said that most people would opt to get the safe $500 because they're risk averse, loss averse.
Yep.
They take the safe $500. On the exact opposite end of that, he said if you had a 50% chance of losing $1,000 or guaranteed to lose 500, most people took the risk. They didn't want to be forced to give up 500. They'd rather take the risk of getting zero or giving up 1,000.
Yeah.
So he said that when all your options are bad, you become risk seeking to try and minimize the risk. But if it's all good, you're going to reduce the risk as much as possible and go for the safe bet.
Yeah. So again, knowing this kind of shit will make you do better decisions, and probably this chapter will make you become a better poker player, I reckon. Knowing what bet size to do in certain cases, but there's a fair bit poker, really, is it?
No, you can apply it though. There was some good stuff.
Yeah. Definitely.
Again, it's a massive book. We're only going through some of the really top-notch stuff, but there's plenty of good stuff.
Spot on, mate. And one of the top notches was chapter 30.
Yeah.
Rare events. So this is about the availability cascade.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got the idea, if it's shown in the media and gets a little bit of interest, and then if interest goes up and occupies your brain, we put a disproportionate amount of weight to what something should get.
Uh-huh.
And terrorism would be one example, right?
Yeah. Terrorism's a good example in that it's not actually that common, and it doesn't actually kill that many people. But because it's in the media, everyone's talking about it, there's so much public interest around it, even though it's such a rare event in actual statistically, it's so prevalent in the media and everyone's talking about it that we actually think it's really common.
Yeah, definitely. So he says emotional arousal increases the availability cascade, which is obviously huge in the media. When you see an event on the front page, they're not appealing to your logic, they're appealing to your emotion. So what you're going to do with that emotion, you're going to put a disproportionate amount of thought into that event occurring than it should get.
Yeah, definitely. And that availability cascade is that, so if an event happens, the media reports on it, and then the next stage is that there's a lot of public interest around it, a lot of people talking about it. And because it's so popular in the public, the media reports on it even more.
Yeah.
And then people talk about it even more. So it keeps building up until we kind of think it's a really common occurrence.
Mate, that's absolutely huge. It just shows, like something like terrorism. I saw a stat the other day, like the odds of you dying of something like terrorism are pretty much zero, and the amount that the world spends on that, it's in $200 billion range or whatever. Whereas you're most likely to die from coronary heart disease, or things like that. But we do not put the proportional amount of money into studies like that.
Yeah.
What we do is put into terrorism. We go to fucking war and all that kind of shit when perhaps it's probably a bad investment. But what the collective does is we're so emotionally aroused by something like that. We think it's so much more likely that terrorism is going to be an impact in our lives when it's pretty much zero chance of that.
Yeah.
Mate, love that chapter.
And do you reckon all of the wars that we've been fighting recently are because of terrorism?
Yeah.
Or maybe there's some ulterior motives.
Yeah, not too sure, mate.
Maybe that's another episode.
Maybe that's another episode.
Not this. There's plenty of other things you can listen to.
Yeah, definitely. Another one, chapter. So the next
is part 5, yeah?
Yeah, part 5 now, which is the two selves. Mate, this is really cool stuff, I thought.
Yeah, well, mate, tell us the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self.
Yeah, so he breaks things down into how we view events. So we have one, the experiencing self, so that's what you're going through right now. Mm-hmm. And the remembering self, so after the event has occurred, as the name suggests, like what we remember of the event. And sometimes what the remembering self thought, the experiencing self thought, is pretty much completely wrong.
Yeah.
What this book shows is there's some awesome studies to show the remembering self is sometimes completely off the mark and makes stupid decisions
Yeah.
based on what it thinks the experiencing self actually experienced.
Yeah, definitely.
Makes sense?
Yeah. So just to quickly summarise that, in that our remembering self makes the decisions because we remember what it used to be like, so we base our decisions on what we thought happened, but almost all the time our remembering self is wrong.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between biology and rationality. Do you want to give an example of maybe the injections or...
Yeah. So he had
treatments?
so this big study that he did with a group of other scientists. So you got two patients. So patient A has a real quick pain, and at the end of 30 seconds, it ends abruptly. So there's a high peak and then ends really abruptly.
Yeah.
Whereas patient B, they have the same amount of pain at one point, and then whereas this though, it goes over for a much longer time. So it might be like 3 minutes of long pain. So it has the same peak, but then it kind of trails off over time. So if you did the integral of the pain, of the total sum of the pain, patient B has a lot more pain for the experiencing self.
Yeah.
However, what they found was when people were asked, okay, what one would you like to experience after both of them?
Yeah.
Rather than choosing A, which has the same peak pain that it ends abruptly, people choose the second one, which has a lot more pain but trails off over time.
Yeah.
Because what we give a disproportionate amount of weight to the very end of the pain interval, right?
Yeah. So he said that we neglect the duration.
Yep.
So if you have, as you say, 30 seconds of 8 out of 10 or 3 minutes of 8 out of 10 pain, our remembering self remembers them as just an 8 out of 10 pain.
Yep.
Doesn't remember that one was 6 times as long.
Yep.
Yeah. And
So,
as you said, it's sort of like the start and the end are the most important. And if you trail off instead of an abrupt ending, then we remembered that as a much better or much easier treatment.
Yeah, definitely. So one actionable thing I got out of this was, say if you go on a date, rather than have a long drawn out date and then you might have a few peak moments, you're better off having a short date, having a few very high peak moments and a very good end peak moment. So rather than buying, say if you go out for drinks with a bird, you might buy drinks all night.
Yeah.
But maybe what you're better off doing is buying this one fucking sick cocktail and being a real gentleman for like 1 minute. I've been a good gentleman for the rest as well, right?
Yeah.
But the person's most likely to remember these peak moments at the in the middle or whatever, and then at the end. So you have a real strong end. Maybe you do the cocktail at the end. Maybe you open the door for her at the end of the night or whatever. You do something awesome, and then you have she's meant to. The remembering self will think of you as much better than you probably are. So.
Yeah, nice. Mate, does this work? He says that duration's not important. It's more about the peak intensity.
Yeah.
Does it work for sex as well? Rather than going for 20 minutes,
hope so.
go for a short and sharp.
No, I reckon girls aren't fooled of that.
Not as that. Yeah. So duration does
they realise. So if you've got a song playing, they'll realise, hang on, there's only one song.
But maybe we need a lot of short, sharp songs.
Yeah.
Mate, this is becoming a pretty long episode because it's a long book and there's a lot of stuff. Mate, I just want to ask you, chapter 37 we're going to talk about. Yeah. Mate, you said, your comment was, reading chapter 37 made me think I don't want to have kids.
Yeah.
So what's the go there?
Yeah. So it basically, I'll try and explain this as best I can. So it goes here, the remembering... So at this point we understand the remembering self distorts the time duration of something. So what they did was they did a study that throughout the day... they asked how they feel like in the moment, so they got an idea of what the experiencing self is feeling, and then they had the remembering self explain it. But what they found in this study was, like with parents, the experiencing self has something called a U index. So I'm going to explain the U index. So they're measuring utility, so the amount of enjoyment they're getting per moment. So they found the experiencing self with kids was actually had a very high U index, meaning the experiencing self is not enjoying having kids.
Yeah.
However, the remembering self distorts the whole period thinking. The remembering self measures U index at a very different rate.
Yeah, for sure. And like we were just talking about, we don't remember the duration, but we just remember the peaks. So that you're going to remember the really cool times, but you're not going to remember the 18 years of not so good times.
So I kind of was clutching straws because I was trying to get a bit of confirmation bias, mate, because I'm not the biggest fan of having kids myself. But open to change, mate.
Yeah.
And another actionable one in this chapter was there's a U index higher during the week, so you got less utility during the week when you're at work. And the best U index, which is the lowest, is when you are in charge of your time, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, nice.
If you're working 60 hours a week and you always have to do things, that's when you're at your lowest utility or your lowest enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
Which is, self-explanatory. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense for sure. The other one here was that they did a study and they found that the U index, which is for American women, was 19%. For French women, it was 14%.
Yep.
So that's a big difference. And they found that mostly because of the time spent eating. And the time spent eating for Americans was combined with other activities.
Yep.
Whereas the time spent eating for French women, they were focused on just eating, so they could enjoy their time and enjoy the people they were with while they were eating.
Yep.
Whereas the Americans in this study weren't enjoying that eating time because they were doing other things.
Yep.
So by combining eating with other activities, their pleasure from eating was diluted.
Yeah. Bang on, mate. Well said. So yeah, we got through it. That's it's one of our longer episodes, but it's a big book. We only covered about 30% of it.
Yeah.
And
what did we do? We did about 8 chapters out of 38. Yeah. So there's a lot more in there for sure.
So what it does do, the book, it does change the way you think in times. Like the most actionable I got was probably, I don't want fucking kids. Anchoring and...
Don't trust your intuition
Don't trust your intuition.
Stop and think.
Planning fallacy. And just understanding that maybe we're not that logical all the time.
Yeah. Oh, there's a really cool video as well. If you go to YouTube and type in The Invisible Gorilla, watch that.
That was in the book, right?
Yeah, it was in the book. We won't give away the punchline.
Yeah.
And there's another one straight after that called Monkey Business.
Guys, watch this YouTube clip because it encapsulates what the whole book says.
System 1 and System 2, how they work.
With a little bit of reticular activation system, which we've covered in other potties.
Yeah, Invisible Gorilla. Have a look. It's pretty cool.
Mate, we're going to start singing?
Yeah. Sometime. Let's find a song.
Let's fucking start singing.
Thinking fast and slow.
Want to think better.
System 1. Fast thinking. System 2. Slow thinking.
Illusion. Cognitive illusions all real. System 1 and fucking real. System 2. Fucking yeah.
Anchors. Regression to the mean. Answer that easier question.
If you sit down with your boss, put a big anchor in, you'll get more money, mother.
Kahneman won a Nobel Prize.
Won a Nobel Prize. Daniel Kahneman, man. Nobel Prize, yeah.
Prospect theory, endowment effect. Rare events, risk policies.
Experience self is smarter than the remembering self. Don't have kids, you're gonna hate your shit. Yeah. Gonna get fooled. Get fooled.
Don't watch the news, there's an availability cascade. Terrorists.
The terrorists are coming, gonna fuck you up. The terrorists gonna kill the whole world, covering every heart disease, ain't gonna do shit. Worry about terrorism, yeah!
Thinking fast and slow. Daniel Kahneman.
Terrorists gonna come and blow your shit up. Gonna blow your shit up, yeah! Blow your shit up, yeah! Blow your shit up, yeah! Blow your shit up, yeah!